When I was a kid and I would make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I would put a big dollop of jelly on the peanut butter side and a big dollop of peanut butter on the jelly side, and I'd put it together. And I thought that nobody would ever be able to pull my sandwich apart if I did that. But that bite in the middle of the double layers was chef's kiss. I think that's how you say it. I don't really like fishing because if I don't catch anything in the first few minutes, I am no fun to be around. I start throwing stuff. Um, but at one point, I'd figured that if I could run to the front of the fishing line and yank it, that I would sink the hook deeper and then I'd have a better chance reeling in the fish. That didn't work. I used to think that cutting grass was the coolest job ever because I thought that when I was cutting grass, I was giving God a haircut. And that's the kid that had all of those thoughts and a whole lot more. But at 1 Corinthians 13:11, it says, when I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away the childish things. And so here's me a little older. This is right before my prom. Yeah, it's kind of snazzy, right? I guess you could describe me as snarky a little bit at that point because I still had questions. I would wonder if there was like a good angel on one side and a demon on the other, and they were both telling me what to do, or sometimes they were arguing about which one I was going to listen to. I would ask myself, do you pray over leftovers? I mean, you've, you've already blessed it. Do you bless it again? And I wondered that was there ever a time before Jesus performed a miracle, he was like, watch this. Because again, when I was a child, I spoke and I thought and I reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put away the childish things. But what actually is considered childish? I think it's good to be curious because curiosity leads to questions. And some of us might find ourselves in a place where we have questions. And if I am speaking to you and you have questions, I'm here to tell you that you're in good company. The Bible, well, you can't read it from that one, but the Bible is full of examples of people who had questions for and about God. They questioned regarding suffering, refusing to believe in a resurrection without seeing proof, questioned if he was truly the Messiah. So again, if you have questions, understand that that is a good place to be. I mean, Kate kind of gave me a nice intro in talking about how we do have questions at times. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. Because I certainly had some questions back in 2004. I had just been hired for a bartending job at Churchill Downs. And this was going to be my first job that I'd had in about a year. And so I'd spent my last $20 on the non-skid shoes that you have to have. And as I was lacing them up, I got a call from Churchill Downs. And they said, Upon further review of your application, we've determined it's probably best that you not work here. I said, well, how did we get here? How did I make it this far? I've had an interview. I went to a training. You got me one of those engraved name tags, so I felt like we were invested at this point. They said, but we realized you lost your last job for a complaint. And I said, I'm sure that that's what it says on paper, but I have documentation that would suggest that it was otherwise. The lady said, what we'll do is I'll sit down and I'll personally do your interview again in 2 weeks. Which sounds okay, except that that 2-week timeline would have put me well beyond Derby. And the fact that I hadn't had a job for a whole year, I needed that money. My landlord needed that money more than I did. But that was not going to be sufficient for me. So I got off the phone with her. I gathered up all of my paperwork, put it in my backpack, got on the bus. It was the 18, by the way. And I go to Churchill Downs, and I'm walking around the parking lot upset and frustrated. I started talking to some random stranger about what I was going through. I walked into the trailer that housed the HR department and started talking to the receptionist, telling her about my issues. And then a lady comes out of an office, and she's like, Quan? And I said, yes. She said, yeah, I talked with you and said that we would meet. And I said, yeah, but that's not good enough for me. And we sat down and talked, and she stuck with her guns, and she decided that they would do the interview in 2 weeks. So I walked away. I was upset. I was frustrated, and I was like, well, let me call my dad, and let me see if I can talk to him about some injustice, and he can see if there's somebody that has my back. And so I called my dad, and he said, Quan, you didn't work there. I said, what do you mean? I got it. I went to training. They gave me a name tag. He said, Quan, you didn't work there. I said, well, but they owe me for training. Fine, they owe you for some hours, but did you work there? What were you doing when you found that job? I was looking for a job. Okay, well, now that you don't have a job, you are back to looking for a job. Again, I didn't necessarily want to hear that at the moment, but I had no choice. What I realized is that when I didn't get that job, I had questions and conversation for any and everybody. The hiring person, the random person in the parking lot, the receptionist, my father, everybody but God. You see, in that moment, I couldn't find a job in over a year. There were nights that I was trying to figure out how I was going to eat. I'm thinking that the landlord really needs his money. And there was a sense of embarrassment about everything that I was going through in that moment. But in hindsight, those jobs weren't for me. And as most people can tell, I didn't starve. I used to wonder why I was the only 8-year-old that knew how to do drywall until that landlord said that I could do that type of work on a property he had to pay off some of my rent debt. And all of those times of packing a lunch and leaving the house to beat the pavement back when you had to actually show up at a job to apply for it, that was a character building exercise and helped me to build up some certain levels of empathy. I heard somebody say it. If I show this picture, everybody knows who this is, but just for conversation's sake, anybody want to tell me who this is? I heard MJ. I heard Michael Jordan. Somebody said the GOAT. I heard Michael Jackson. Don't know if I agree with that. But When I see this picture, I say Michael Jeffrey Jordan, born February 17th, 1963, in Brooklyn, New York, played basketball in high school in Wilmington, North Carolina, went to North Carolina, won a college championship, multiple NBA championships, 6 in total, 2 three-peats, Olympic gold medals, literally one of the most recognizable figures on the planet. And about 20 years ago, I met him and I shook his hand. I said, "I'm a fan, Mr. Jordan," and that was the end of that conversation. But does he know me? Does me knowing all of these facts and statistics about Michael Jordan somehow make us closer? Do you think that Michael Jordan knows anything about Quan Founder? Do you think I could have sent him a Facebook message and said, "Hey, I'm going to talk about you in my sermon. Why don't you stop by?" Does he know who I am or what makes me tick? Does Michael Jordan know my fears? You see, perhaps I viewed God as this authoritative figure who just seemed like somebody that I couldn't connect with or ever reach or ever be good enough for. One of the biggest realizations that I had over time in my life was that for years I had questions about God, but never focused my questions to God. There's a difference in about God and to God. Again, I know about Michael Jordan. I don't really know Michael Jordan. I know about God, and I know God. I was looking for answers to the questions, not realizing that connection was the overall goal, and the going back and forth and the asking of those questions is what builds the relationship. It's transactional versus personal. Knowing versus knowing of. So again, what starts out as curiosity leads to questions. And most of the time, the answer to those questions is that there's some sort of help necessary and not something that I can do on my own. That need for help should lead us to the Lord in prayer. So again, this is me, a little bit older, and as we talk about knowing versus knowing of, I could quote scriptures and recall some Bible stories. I remember my mother's testimonies and how she would talk about the things God was doing in her life, but also the way that He did them. I knew God because my family introduced us, but their faith wasn't enough to save me. It set a foundation, but it wasn't enough. I had to know God for myself. Not just about Him, but to know Him. And I knew about God, but I understood it better as my relationship with Him developed, which required some honest humility. A friend who invites you to leave your burdens to him will listen to and soothe your cries and address needs before you can even ask them. Again, when we talked about this looking back list, most of the time when I get up here, I talk about a switch in a lens. But again, you can see that in the hindsight version, this suggests that there is something else there, that there's always something on the other side. And so when I wanted to know God better, he accompanied me through trials to show me who he was. He reminded me and reminds me of situations that I've been delivered from to prove who he had already been. I was asking God to tell me who he was, and he opted instead to show me. And in this photo, again, as I'm growing there, I still have the curiosity and I still have the questions. Like, I've ever been in the middle of a prayer and then I was like, I want to make sure that I include such and such, and then I remember somebody else, and then I'm like, well, I can't name everybody, and then is my prayer not sufficient? And now I'm worrying about the prayer that I was trying to make that encompassed everybody. If anybody's saying me too, then you're right. It's not just me, and it's not just you. Or you ever did the rerun prayer where you prayed for something, you let it go, but then you came back, where like, I prayed for it again. And then I imagine, is God like, I know that I know that you prayed for that already. And sometimes God just tells us to relax. He's already got it. So again, the journey that brings us to God and brings us back to the greater curiosity, it starts with that, goes to the questions, need help, go to God in prayer. That prayer is the building of the foundation and the relationship that you have with him. That's not the end. For some people, there may be questions that you have. And as we talked about, that is an okay place to be. But where do you go with those questions? Like, where do you start? Or if you have curiosities that you don't know how to form into questions, then let's start with some easy ones. We're going to take this phrase, "Is it just me?" and break down a few different ways that it could be interpreted. Now, I understand as I tried to put these slides together, there might be some visual distortion, so bear with me, and I'll make sure that I read the scripture and help us all get to where we're trying to go. So if you are thinking, is it only me? Am I by myself? The scripture says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So if anybody is wondering if they are all alone, the scripture says, no, you're not. He is with you. There are some people who say, this is just me and this is just who I am. There is no changing of me. This is what you get. To that, at Matthew 13, 14, and 15, to paraphrase, it says, "For these people's heart has become callous. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and in turn, I would heal them." So healing is possible, but change also has to happen for that. And for change to be possible, then it can't be that that is just who you are. I think everybody has room to grow and improve. Is it merely me? Again, there are times that I do things that I don't even believe are possible, but that's because it is not me. At Philippians, it says, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose." So again, it is merely, I think of myself meagerly. It is never me and my own power, my initiative. I try to make sure that I am in line with what God is asking me to do and allow him to utilize me to do that. So it's not me. It's him working through me. Is it just about me? Do my actions only affect me? And the answer is no. At Proverbs 27:17, it says that as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. In other words, there are some people who are counting on you to be iron to help them become iron. And helping them become iron helps somebody else become iron. So it's not just about you. We are designed to operate within community. And so it's not just about you. Okay? So again, with wonder, as a child, I had a vivid imagination. And that wonder sparked curiosity. It led to questions. And the answers to those questions and the seeking of understanding built certain aspects of confidence. Me understanding when I did have problems and issues, when I do have problems and issues, that I can bring them to the Lord, that helped me to build my levels of faith. And then I just stand back and am amazed at the things that he does and the way that he does them. So if I were to put all of this into a flow chart, again, it's a journey that leads us to God, but also brings us back to the wonder, to continue that cycle over and over again. The wonder leads to curiosity, curiosity to questions, questions leading to the understanding that I certainly need some help here. That leads us to prayer. Prayer leads to the building and the construction of faith. The realization of that faith establishes the confidence. And knowing that all of that is possible just makes us wonder what else is out there. So in summary, kind of early, I might add, curious is a good place to be. Questions are good. They deepen our relationship and our understanding of God. In case you didn't know, God is interested in you. He is curious about you. He invites us to engage with him. He wants to connect with us. And if you feel unfamiliar, draw close. It says if you feel that there is some distance between you and God, for whatever reason, ask him to reveal to you what is causing that gap. Draw closer, and you will feel him drawing closer to you. God is constantly speaking to us if we're quiet enough to hear him. Sometimes there are other things that are going on. There might be other parts of ourselves that we are listening to. And sometimes it's not words. Sometimes it's actions. Sometimes it's visions, it's sights. It can be sounds. But he's constantly speaking to us if we are quiet enough to pick up the frequency. Again, address your questions in the right direction. Remember, I had questions about God. I was asking everybody else to tell me who God was, instead of me saying, God, here I am and I want to know. I am curious. Please tell me about you. Show me who you are. Again, we are designed to operate within community. So do that and be that. Operate within community, but also be community worthy. Be community to other people. When you pray not just for the solution, but pray for the patience to wait on Him and the understanding to recognize the right solution when it presents itself. That job at Churchill Downs, I thought that was the right one. It had to be. It had to be. But that was not what He had for me. And last but not least, it's not just you. Even when it feels like it. It never is. It's not just you.